Maybe to conclude, to open this up just for a very big question. There's images here of nature, of water. You've mentioned the yellow dragon earlier on. You've mentioned the odes as having an importance to name animals and birds and plants and so on. Views of nature in the Analects. Can you give us just a feeling for that?
I think that Confucius, again, his world is much more, his concerns were much about the human world.
Mm-hmm.
And that, given that, he loved to use images from nature or animal movements or birds' movements as an analogy.
Yes.
So I think toward the very end of Book 10, he and his disciple Zilu were just out in the wild, and then their presence alarmed a female pheasant. And so this pheasant sort of began a flight. She was alarmed by this, the presence of humans, and she began to circle the sky a few times, and then she alighted on the mountain ridge, and Confucius sort of bowed to this particular pheasant and said, how timely her actions, how timely her actions. I think he actually considered something like that is sacred, and he feels that nature, and again, maybe one could read a lot more into it, but nature, one could use examples from nature, is analogy for timely action, for a kind of unforced action. Okay?
Yes.
I think the word spontaneity has been misused. I avoid that word. For something that is not forced and it's not pushy.
Mm-hmm.
And he likes that. And so in the 4th and 3rd century BC, a few hundred years after he died, these ideas became so well developed in the teachings of Xunzi, in the teachings of the Laozi, and certainly in the teachings of the Zhuangzi. And so it's an idea that I think that really crosses so-called the different schools of teachings.
Yeah.
And I also love what he said, again, toward the end of the Analects. He said to his disciple Zigong, I think I'll just be silent now. And Zigong said, Master, you can't do that. You're our teacher. How could you be silent? And he says, what does heaven ever say? Meaning, what does nature ever say?
Mm-hmm.
And everything circles around it. What does nature ever say? And that comes back to your question about trust. And I love what Xunzi in the 3rd century BC said about nature. Nature does all it can.
Mm-hmm.
And that should be the model for humans.
Right. That flourishing, that givingness.
Yeah, and then it has trust.
Yeah.
The 4 seasons are going to arrive in time.
Yes.
You can trust that. And so it doesn't have to say anything, doesn't have to push any ideas or any theories. It doesn't even have to have any sort of evident authority. You can trust nature.
Yes. And certainly in the later tradition, we complete that cycle of heaven, right? The heaven, earth, human cycle that we're trying to fit into that beauty, that reliability, and so on.
But it has its negative side too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. This is wonderful.
Thank you.